Across the Border, a case study presented by Paul Carey, Jennifer Conklin-Frank, Harris Henry, and Kevin Shucker.
This case study begins with a suburban middle school 8th grade French class on a 4-day cultural trip to Montreal, Quebec, Canada. During this trip, on the second day, the female French teacher went to the room of 2 male students. At that time, she saw rolling papers on the nightstand of one of the students. In the assumption that the rolling papers belonged to a particular male student, she then searched his belongings and found a plastic bag containing marijuana-like substance. After questioning both students, she determined that only one was involved and placed a phone call to the principal. What do you do next?
Here are some items to think about. Policy, relevant law, school code of conduct, actions, immediate actions that need to be taken, involvement of law enforcement, documentation, and the impact on the trip for the remaining students. And then the student rights, search and seizure, impartial hearing, adult and legal representation during question. Question 1. How do you determine if it is actually marijuana? A. The teacher could examine it. B. The teacher could ask the student. And C. The police will conduct a chemical test to determine if it's marijuana.
As the lead administrator, the most important tool that you can have during this decision-making process is the knowledge of school policy. For the purposes of this case study, we reference the Clarence Central School District Code of Conduct. According to the code, a violation is the possession or consumption of illegal substances. The action articulated in the Code of Conduct is the confiscation of the illegal substance. It also says that the building principal or designee must notify the appropriate local law enforcement agency.
The school policy that applies here is a school-sponsored field trip is an extension of the school. All school policies and rules apply during school-sponsored activities. We understand that this took place in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, but we just wanted to take a look at the New York State penal law. 221.05, unlawful possession of marijuana. A person is guilty of unlawful possession of marijuana when he knowingly and unlawfully possesses marijuana. Unlawful possession of marijuana is a violation punishable only by a fine of not more than $100. Question 3. Who should be notified? We thought we should notify the superintendent, police, the parents, and the school resource officer.
Who are the witnesses with regard to this case study? Obviously, the other student in the room is the first-hand witness, but other students and teachers on the field trip could also be considered witness. Also, draw your attention to the teacher who conducted the search. It did not say whether or not she asked another teacher to be present as witness when she searched the belongings of the student. This might be an important fact to remember in the future. As per Canadian law and the rules outlined in the Code of Conduct, the marijuana must be turned over to the authorities immediately. During this process, it is vital that the administrator and the teachers are aware of and uphold the rights of the students. The first piece is the search and seizure piece, where students have a reasonable expectation to privacy. With the observation of the rolling papers clearly marked on the table, it gave reasonable cause for a search. The search should also be conducted with witnesses present. Other adults in the room is the best scenario here. During interrogation, it is important that parents give consent, especially during questioning from the authorities. Every effort must be made to ensure that this consent is received.
Question 7. Should the student or students be sent home at the parent's expense? For question 7, we thought it was important to look at school board policy. If it dictates that we remove the student from the trip, is that even possible being in Montreal, Quebec, Canada? Can the parents pick up the students? How many days are remaining of the field trip? Is there staff available to escort the student home? Do we want to send the student home? Is the student a danger to himself or others? These are questions that you would have to look at to answer question number 7. Question 8. What is the potential impact on the other students vis-a-vis the trip's objective? We know that other students will be upset. will know that other students want to know the details. We think it's important to explain that a student was sent home, but not to give the specific details. We do believe that this is the perfect opportunity to reiterate the code of conduct on a field trip.
So, how do you ensure that there is appropriate documentation of what happened every step of the process? Two pieces need to be in place. The first is training and professional development. All parties need to be aware of their roles and responsibilities. The second piece is documentation, forms such as incident report forms that clearly identify the steps for documenting the event. What other information does an administrator need? First, they need to understand or give direction to the teacher during that first initial phone call. They also need to know who they need to notify and when they need to notify them. They need to understand the disciplinary actions and protocols and the documentation process. As the lead administrator, direct the teacher to do the following. Have them separate the students and question them for any additional information. Maybe they can determine the source of the contraband. Help them to call and cooperate with the authorities. Make sure that they are present if the police need to question the students, and always have the parents on the phone during that questioning. It is vital to communicate to the teacher that the documentation must include all of the events that led to the initial search, as well as any witnessed accounts. All documentation should be noted within 24 hours of the incident and faxed or mailed to the administrator and superintendent. This information is then passed on to the parents immediately. Question 11. What are some other questions or things that could have been done differently? Our group had 3. The first was, why was the female teacher in the male student's room? Second, is it possible that the trip could go on? And third, with the student's prior discipline history, why was he allowed to go on the trip? This is the conclusion of our case study. We'll appreciate any feedback and commentary you may have.